West Valley City Council today on Tuesday, May the 21st. Welcome those members of the public, press in attendance, those watching at home on WVCTV, and by way of roll call, notice that all members of the council are present with the exception of Mayor Winder, who's asked to be excused, and joining on the dais tonight is City Manager Wayne Pyle and Acting City Recorder Ms. Deanne Barney, who we're pleased to have join us for tonight's proceedings. Each council meeting we take turns as the elected officials to set the tone of the meeting with an opening ceremony, which can sometimes range from a joke to a prayer or some type of thought. And tonight's honor and responsibility falls to District 3 Council Member Karen Lang. So, Councilmember Lang, take it away.
Would you all stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appears that we have no special recognitions tonight, so we'll move to item 5 on our agenda, which is the approval of our minutes from the regular meeting of May the 7th, 2013. Council members.
Move for approval of the minutes of May 7th, 2013.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Appears to be unanimous, and those minutes are approved. Item 6 is our comment period, where we set aside some time to hear from the public and be able to discuss items that are not scheduled for a public hearing or discussion tonight. And we have one person that signed up tonight. It's Ruth Ann Hertel.
Hi.
Hi. Come on up to the microphone, and you'll have 5 minutes, and we do have your name and address here for our records, and so you can just go ahead and begin speaking whenever you're ready.
Okay. I am proposing a change in the city ordinance to allow backyard chickens. Modern life includes sustainable living practices such as small gardens, recycling, green living, and should include the opportunity to expand sustainable, healthy, extremely tasty source of food for our families. Backyard chickens are a part of the modern society. I understand that it's your jobs as elected officials to create a balance between individuals' needs and community welfare. That is why I am suggesting that rules and regulations be included in the chicken ordinance, such as obtaining a permit, annual fees, or as one of the other cities in Utah, a 3-year renewal. Number of chickens have a limit. You have coop regulations such as size, distance from adjacent lot, distance from property lines. No roosters are allowed. No, they're not allowed to roam, and you're not to be selling or bartering the eggs for profit. We can use the multitude of cities of Utah as their ordinances as examples to create a non-restrictive yet community-respecting ordinance. The cities include cities from Provo to Ogden, as well as in other states. We have New York, Los Angeles, Honolulu, Hawaii, San Antonio, the list goes on and on. And so I'm asking, if West Valley wants to be progressive, innovative, and modern, why are we one of the only 2 cities in Utah that do not allow backyard chickens? So my motion is to change the ordinance to allow a limited number, depending on the lot. We lived in Tooele. We had 5 chickens. We had a beautiful coop. It was clean. We never had any problems. We didn't have any of the smell. We didn't have any of the rodents or anything like that. So it is possible. I know one of the arguments they say previously has been that it can cause, or that people will not want to do it anymore, they'll get bored of it. Keeping chickens is a lifestyle. It costs money, it takes upkeep, and if you really are serious about doing it, you're going to spend the money and create the coop. I mean, we built our coop and it was big and beautiful, and it took us 3 weekends to build it. And we were serious about it, and I don't want to lose my chickens. So I would like to live in the city of West Valley, where I'm originally from. My husband and my family is originally from here as well. I don't want to really live in Salt Lake or Provo or anywhere else, and so I'd like to see that West Valley allows backyard chickens. That's it.
Very well spoken. Thank you.
Yes.
Is there anyone else that's come to address the city council in the public comment period? Seeing none, we'll move on and city manager, any comments tonight?
Thank you, sir. I think I probably, if the council will indulge me for a minute, at least just take a moment to comment on the request that was just made by Ms. Hertel. And having just moved from Tooele here within the last little while, you may not be aware of some of the history we've had in consideration of similar requests to this in the past. And so I thought maybe I'd just take a minute to just reiterate real quickly what we've looked at in the past concerning the subject. So over the last, I would say, 4 years, roughly, we've probably, as a council, and there have been varying iterations of members on the council during those considerations, looked at changing our ordinance to allow for domestic fowl or chickens in residential zones, single-family residential zones, or others, at least twice, maybe 3 times. I can't remember for sure. Council certainly has given that long and due consideration, even had the staff bring to you propositions and proposed ordinances that included many of the ordinance changes that were referred to here. In the end, my memory, and then council may want to comment on this as well if I'm in error in my memory, but the council's position seemed to be that we have agricultural zones that do allow for domestic fowl and chickens right now, and the council's preference was to restrict that use to those zones. They did look at some various proposals that I mentioned that would have allowed that within single-family zones, and that seemed to be the delineator for the council. They didn't want to go that far into allowing chickens and raising of chickens within those areas. I might, and there may be some added commentary to that from the council. So the reason I wanted to reiterate that history was to just make sure that anybody, whether it's Ms. Hertel or anybody that's watching the proceedings tonight, would know that the council has taken a very close and a considerate look at that in the past. We certainly honor and it takes a lot of courage to come in and make that suggestion, so we appreciate your being willing to do that and coming in and making those suggestions, and clearly you have researched and put a lot of thought into that. Absolutely.
This was just from yesterday.
Yes. So, and also thank you for stating your desire and your likelihood and as I mentioned, desire to want to stay here and live in West Valley. We appreciate that as well. We do believe we also have a great community here, and we appreciate your return. And so I'm not proposing one thing one way or the other. Certainly, as I mentioned, the council's considered this before. You may or you may not want to change that currently or into the future. I don't know. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that this has been considered. We take your suggestions seriously, and others have made those in the past as well.
Thank you. Council members, now's your time to weigh in on any item that's been discussed tonight or anything else.
I'd just like to also comment on the proposed ordinance that was suggested. And yeah, we have had this conversation a lot of time, several times. And I know that one of the proposals was to allow it in residential with certain setbacks, from a certain amount of setback from a neighbor's residence. And when we looked at the overall map of the city, by the time you had those setbacks, which was, I don't know, 20 feet or that they just didn't fit in residential areas because of the setback requirements. And so I know we've looked at it, and we have a lot of small lots in the city, and so that made it real problematic to do that. But as Mr. Pyle said, we've had a discussion, and we, there may be somebody here that wants to bring it back and revisit it, and we could at that time. So
I'll throw in my comments and then turn the meeting back over to just to Ravi Mayor. But the first thing was I wanted to note that tonight is our Crossing Guard annual banquet, and what a good job they do. And I just wanted to publicly thank them in our regular meeting of the good work that they do, and what an asset they are to the community, not only in their services as crossing guards, but just as good members and co-creators of our community. I guess just to echo what Councilmember Vince is talking about with the chicken thing is it was a very healthy exercise when we took it up as a city council. And I think we learned a lot about our city and just its makeup. And when people ask me about the chickens, I am always quick to point out that I have two neighbors that legally in West Valley City have neighbors just because they're in an appropriate agricultural zone. And so really the question is chickens in the residential zone. And as you pointed out, when we looked at it, I think, I'm in favor of modifying the ordinance to the 50-foot setback, but as you noted, that would benefit very few homes within our city. And so I think for many residents, it kind of became a little bit of a moot point. But appreciate you coming and bringing the item to our attention again tonight, because I think it's an important one. So, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for holding down the fort. And I have a few comments myself this evening. One on chickens. It sounds like I missed a little discussion on that. My personal philosophy on the chickens in our city is a little bit don't ask, don't tell. I know people in neighborhoods not too far from mine that have them, and I don't know specifically which house, but so I've heard. And if their neighbors, if they're doing a good job and it's being kept clean and no one's complaining in the neighborhood, then it goes on, obviously, and has for years. And as soon as they don't keep it nice and neat and neighbors complain, then obviously there's rules on the books to enforce that. So I'm not encouraging any civil disobedience. I'm just providing an elected official commentary. Another item I wanted to mention is we had the discussion on a couple weeks back about the rezone there at 35th South and 5600 West, and one of the concerns of the neighbors who reached out to me this past week was about pawn shops there. And they talked about how if you Google up pawn shops and how they affect neighborhood value and image of a community and everything, it's very measurable and detrimental. And a lot of what this resident was describing to me was similar to a lot of the studies we looked at when we put a cap citywide on the number of check cashing institutions. I forget, Wayne, what the technical name is. Predatory lending institutions, or
I don't think that's the technical term we use, but something in the...
But you know what I mean, the check cashing. And we've capped that successfully and legally as a city. And I said to this resident, well, I'll bring it up with my colleagues on, is that something we want to look at is a cap on the number of pawn shops in a city? Because there is studies that show that their effect on property values is very similar to these check cashing places. So Wayne, I'll just pass that comment publicly on to you and maybe your staff to take a look at and report back. The other thing I want to say in this comment period was I received a telephone call this morning from Lane Beatty, president of the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce, also former Senate president, and he said, Mayor, I just wanted to call and tell you congratulations on the very superb and professional job your police department did with the Susan Powell case and how you handled yesterday's event specifically. And he's had praise for all those who were involved in yesterday's press event, releasing those documents specifically for Mike Powell, and said he thought he was especially phenomenal with the professional way he answered a lot of those delicate questions. And said, he goes, it was a day I was proud of West Valley City and proud of Utah because you handled a very delicate issue well. So he asked me to pass those good compliments on to the elected officials and staff. The third thing is we have coming up on June 1st an event to celebrate Merrill Hutchinson, who many of us know on this dais, and who at the instigation of Councilmember Christensen were presenting with the Essential Peace Award that night. He's put over 35 years into scouting achievements and has been told by the doctors he has just a few months to live with his terminal cancer. It's going to be quite an event on June 1st with a number of from the Great Salt Lake Council and other officials coming. And I was asked by Ken Shaw, one of the organizers, to find out who, if any of the elected officials, will be there. Because if you are, they'd like to have you sit on the stand in the church building, and also they want to list your name so that the senior patrol leader conducting can acknowledge you. So as you look at your schedules, I know we have Fiesta and there's other things going on that night. Let me know if you will be at that, and I can let Mr. Shaw know so that he can plan accordingly. So those are kind of the communication items I had this evening.
And I think, Mayor, that we're also presenting that publicly at the next council meeting after that day. That was when his family could be here for the public presentation also. So,
Okay, so we'll present it the June 1st, and then we present it again the next week is the plan?
yes.
Okay. Any other council comments? Okay, let's go to item 7 tonight, which is ordinance 13-22. Mr. Pyle?
Thank you, sir. This proposed ordinance codifies the rules by which the Professional Standards Review Board will operate. We've had conversation and discussion about this subject a number of times over past weeks, and we've outlined for the council our proposed recommendations, which are partially enumerated here. And so we propose adopting that ordinance.
Thank you, sir. Any comments or motion from the council members regarding 13-22?
Mayor, I just a couple of comments. Over the last couple of weeks, I've had people approach me about this, and one of the items that they were a little bit concerned with was just the length of time that the people spend on this board, and whether or not we ought to have some sort of limits on the time. I don't really have a feeling one way or the other, but I just thought I'd bring it to the attention, see if there was anybody else that had been approached and about maybe limiting the amount of time so that it gives either more people an opportunity to serve on this board or just fresh eyes to serve on the board. I don't know.
We did have a discussion about these changes in our study meeting, including that very proposal, because there are certainly some good pros and cons with that. And I believe, and correct me, council, if I'm wrong, the majority of the council at that point said, you know what, we don't have term limits on any other board or commission in the city, and to single out one at this stage we don't want to do. But it was also pretty clear to the city manager that just because someone's on there doesn't mean their term should be automatically renewed, and that to give a good hard consideration and maybe even an interview with people before they are put up again. And so I think that's kind of how because you raised a good point, we tried to...
I don't know, we had the discussion, but I thought I'd just bring it up again since I had a couple of people approach me. So.
Right. Other thoughts, council, on that specific item or anything else with the ordinance or a motion?
Well, if you don't have any comments, I make the motion for this. Motion to approve ordinance 13-2022.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, I'll just add that I appreciate the city manager and his staff helping to facilitate these changes, and also the Professional Standards Review Board members who have given good dedicated service. And this is a board that really has evolved through the years in our city, and as we become a larger city with more sophisticated challenges, these actions that we're taking tonight are very appropriate and very timely. I'll call the question then. All in favor of 1322, say aye.
Aye.
That appears to be unanimous. Mr. Pyle, resolution 1373, please.
Thank you, sir. This resolution is for the purpose of approving a purchase agreement, warranty deed, and a temporary construction easement between the city and Mountain View MHP, and this would be in conjunction with construction of our Crosstown Trail project. Location approximately at 2795 South and 2540 West. We would use about $3,000 out of parking pad fees for the purchase of the right-of-way that we're talking about, and then would we be able to proceed forward with the construction.
Okay, thank you. Council, what's your pleasure on this one?
Mayor, I'll move approval of resolution 1373.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion here? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes. Any need for executive session tonight, anyone? Okay, we proceed to item 10, which is to adjourn. Shorter meeting.